Hey, what's up everybody? Beefy here again. Today I wanted to put together a kind of intro to Path of Exile. Now it's a action RPG type of game that's very similar to Diablo but very different in a lot of specific ways. And I just wanted to give kind of an overview of some of the systems and how the game works because I love it, and to me it's better than Diablo in a lot of ways. But one way in which it is worse than Diablo is how hard it is to get started. So hopefully this video will help address that for some of the newer players. For example, I always wondered how you went from this guy just walking around slapping zombies with a board of wood to this guy who's on maps deleting things and getting really cool loot. So again, I just wanted to at least get people started. I don't think this is by any means a comprehensive guide. I just think it's at least a good way to get started. So let's go ahead with character creation. Make sure you're in the proper league you want, and then we'll start in Ritual, which is the current league. I chose solo self-found just to show you what it looks like. Pick your starting class character. That will make a massive difference for you once the game gets going, so I strongly suggest looking up some builds beforehand. Once you get started, you'll see your first weapon right in front of you, kill that first zombie, and then you'll get your first gem. The gems in this game are what give you your abilities, not your class, not your spec or anything. The gems are what give you your abilities in this game. They come in two forms. They come as active gems, like the one we just picked up, and then when you're making your way through the beach here, make sure you click on that chest to get your first support gem. The support gems support the active gems, and so they empower the active gems. Now this board of wood that I've got has 2 slots, and so one is for the active gem, one is for the support gem. Pretty simple. When you start out, you'll see that you've got some potions down there on the left. The red ones are health, the blue one is mana, and as this barbarian guy, you'll see that I still need both to make it through. So this is the first boss, if you can call him that. It's Hillock, and just wail on him until he dies. There's nothing special about him. Make sure you're using your potions though, because otherwise you're almost certainly not going to survive it. So head on up to Lioneye's Watch. That's the first quest hub. And the quests in Path of Exile are pretty interesting in the sense that they don't award too much experience, but they do award gems for new skills and skill points, which we'll get to in a moment. Now, if we go over to our stash, these are normally shared between characters, but because I'm on solo self-found, you'll see that there's nothing there for me to use from my other character. So we'll go out into the character creation screen, and if we go to SSF Ritual, solo self-found, you can migrate your character over. I'm only doing this just to show you how to manage your characters. If you want to do solo self-found, then go for it. Now if we go back to the stash, you can see that all of the items that I've got from my main character are in there, so it'll make things a little bit easier to level up. Speaking of leveling up, this is the skill tree. The skill tree is going to be exactly the same regardless of which starting class you choose. The only thing that's going to change is where you start. So we're on the Marauder, he's over on the left. Each of these little 3-pronged wheels is a different starting character and starting point on the overall skill tree. Now it's important to note that you will never fill in all of these, so it's extremely important that you find a build you want and work towards it. There are plenty of build guides out on YouTube and various resources, and I'll be sure to post those in the description. Most of the build guides will reference the Ascension class, which is what we're looking at right now. It's an extra skill tree inside of the main skill tree, and it's what gives your class a little bit more power. Now just to show you, over there on the left is where we started with the Barbarian or Marauder, and we're on the right hand side of the skill tree now because we started with the Ranger, who is now a Pathfinder. Now the Ascension classes, you can max out 8 specific extra points that you can take, and in order to get those points you need to run the Labyrinth. The Labyrinth can be found inside Starn Encampment at first, and then you run up and go to Aspirant's Plaza, This opens in Act 3, but you can't unlock it until I think Act 4, once you can finish all the trials. And there's 4 different kinds of labyrinth, each of which unlock 2 skill points in the Ascension class. And here you can see where each of them are located. So once you've got this part open, you'll be able to check your status, except for the Eternal Labyrinth. The Eternal Labyrinth, these trials spawn randomly in the maps that you run. It's entirely random, so they can be extremely time consuming to find. This is what they look like in the map when you're running it. You'll notice it, it's pretty obvious. If you run up and click the plaque, you can check your status. Now this will just tell you which trial you need. It will not say where you need to go. So how do we figure out where to go? I would strongly suggest joining Global Chat Channel 820. In 820, there's folks who put up all kinds of runs, like maps and trials. Just hop on there and wait until somebody says like that right there, solved, stinging doubt, free 2 out of 6 portals left. Now I want to touch briefly on gems and links. Here you can see my chest is a 6 link chest piece. That means that there are 6 links attaching each and every gem slot. Here I've got a 4 link boot. The 4 links and 6 links just mean that the gems will be connected. Also, you can see that they all have colors. Now you can only put a blue gem in a blue spot and a red gem in a red spot. The only exception to this is a white slot. Now you can see that Viper Strike is my active skill on my 6 link, and what that means is this Viper Strike is the gem that's being boosted by all of the other 5 gems in this chest piece. All of the other 5 gems are acting as buffs to this one gem. Again, your skills in this game are only provided by the gems. So outside of your flasks down on the bottom left and your gems, that's where all of your power is going to come from in this game. Your gems and your flasks. Maybe a buff in one specific map or 2. That's it. When you're looking at your build guides, make sure you understand exactly what you need and where it needs to go, because otherwise your build won't work properly. Next up, I just want to touch on the stash real quick. Path of Exile is free to play, but if you're going to use real world money for anything in this game, I would strongly suggest buying different tabs. This will help you keep organized and just keep track of all the different loot you're going to get, because you will get a lot of loot in this game. Also, I would strongly suggest getting a loot filter, and I will put links to those in the description below. Next up, one thing I want to touch on real quick are your defenses. You can see your fire, cold, and lightning resists. Those after Act 10 have to be over 75%. While you're leveling through the base game, I wouldn't worry too much about your resistances. But after you're done with Act 10 and you start maps, your resistances should be capped at 75% each. Now we'll touch on the Atlas real quick. You can see Atlas is divided into several different parts. For example, up here it's called Turn's End, and down here we've got Valdo's Rest. These are important because they will help you find which maps you're looking for in your inventory, but also they will determine what level maps you can do, along with running the Maven encounters. And we'll go over that in a little bit. But right now, just to show in the maps tab that I've got, if I type in Glenac, you'll see that it highlights the level key that I can do that has a Glenac Cairns. So speaking of levels of maps, the way that you increase the level of map on the Atlas is you move these watchstones around. And you get watchstones from defeating special bosses that appear after you've completed enough maps in a specific zone. So here you can see we've got at level 10, level 9, level 12 maps. That's all because of the number of watchstones we got. So why don't we go ahead and run a map real quick. I'll show you kind of how it all comes together. So we've got this red tier 12 map. I'm going to use chisels to improve the quality and quantity of the items that will drop. Now you can notice I'm getting 5% for each chisel because it's white. It hasn't been hidden with an alchemy stone. But now that it's yellow and we use the alchemy stone on it, you can see the item quantity jump to 94% increase, rarity is up to 44, monster pack size is 28, and quality is 20%. You can see below, players are cursed with enfeeble, 22% increased damage, hexproof, so on and so forth. These are the statuses that the maps are going to get that you should really pay attention to when it comes to your build. The build guides that are out there, almost all of them specify that you can or you cannot run specific maps that have specific values. Now, this map that I rolled is pretty good, but there's one thing I want to go over before we run it, and that's the Maven status. So if you go into the map device, you'll see this blue or yellow toggle that you can turn on. That's going to, like it says, call the Maven over. Now, you can see here above Glenart Canes, there's 2 blue bars filled in with 1/3 one that still needs to be filled in. That's how close you are to summoning the Maven. And the Maven is a special boss that drops specific unique and rare items, and you'll need to kill her minions before you can kill her. So right now we have 2 out of 3 bars. Once we get the 3rd bar, we'll get a special invitation and be able to fight her minions. So now looking back at the atlas, you can see that the map that we're trying to do, Malformation level 12, Malformation is in the right spot, but it's only tier 10 or level 10. So what we got to do is grab a different watchstone from a different section and plunk it on down, and now you can see we have a tier 12 level 12 Malformation map. So now the Maven will see it and we'll get credit towards that quest. One final thing I want to point out is that every map you do, you only have 6 attempts to clear it. So make sure you use them wisely, and if you're in multiplayer, then each person who goes into the map will use up a portal. So with that in mind, let's get started on this map. Now the maps are essentially the rifts and the greater rift system from Diablo 3 kind of rolled into one. Personally, I prefer the greater rifts and keystone system that's in Diablo because when it comes to the maps, you have to get map drops, and you can't create them or run like, I guess you could call it free content like the normal rifts. In order to get greater rift keystones in Diablo, here in Path of Exile, you need to get specific drops of specific maps to complete those specific maps. So it's way more RNG dependent, and honestly, to me, that's one of the biggest downsides to the end game for PoE. That being said, obviously, it's not gonna break the game. I mean, this thing's going so strong, and it's so well done that it doesn't present a big problem until you really do like spend a day doing maps and you realize that you ran, I don't know, 10 or 12, and then you check your inventory and you've only picked up like 6. So it's kind of a gripe. Here's this league or this season, if you're familiar with Diablo 3. This is this league's mechanism. It's called the tribute system. You can see the number down at the bottom middle of the screen is ramping up. Basically what you do is you click those totems and they spawn enemies, and you have to kill the enemies. You get more of that currency that was at the bottom center of the screen, and you can essentially buy items with it. So the way that I like to do it is just click the totems, go through, and I don't even check the loot until I'm done with it. So you can see on the bottom right there, I've completed 1 out of 4. That means there's 3 more of these. Here's the second one. This system is actually pretty good because as far as I know, the loot is totally RNG, but it is almost guaranteed loot, because as long as you clear 1 or even 2 of them, you should have enough of the tribute points. Again, they're accumulating in the bottom center of the screen there, in order to actually buy some of the loots that'll pop up. So I think probably there's There's a few things that Path of Exile does way better than Diablo 3. The main one is the builds themselves. In Diablo, the builds really aren't very. There's not a lot of variety, right? You're going to be a spin to win barbarian, and that's super viable, and so you can just go with it. But here in Path of Exile, you can clear most content with a lot of different builds. So, it's really up to you on how you want to play. For example, I know that last season or last league, being a summoner was very powerful because of certain buffs you got, and a lot of people did that, but you didn't have to, right? In Diablo 3, there were so many meta builds that were almost required if you're going to reach higher, greater rift levels, but here in Path of Exile, that's pretty much not the case. You can clear most content with a lot of different builds. And those build guides, again, are extremely well made and created by truly dedicated players. So I'm going to post a link to them in the bottom or in the description. And yeah, hopefully you'll find a style of character you like to play. Something else that Path of Exile does really well is it keeps its content fresh. So you'll see that there's a lot of older systems scattered throughout the game. I think that's actually a strength. Some of the systems are truly legacy and need a big overhaul, like the Labyrinth system. Being locked, your Ascension points being locked behind 4 separate versions of the Labyrinth. That probably made sense when that content was current or mostly current, but nowadays it's just kind of a drag to have to do all of that, find the trials in the maps, and then you get to actually play your character the way that it's intended to. So things like that, they can use some updating, but by and large the systems are very, very well done. Also, while the graphics aren't fantastic, they're better than Diablo 3. Both of these games are starting to show their age, but they're coming out with Path of Exile 2, and they're also coming out with Diablo 4. So here we're coming up to the arena, and this is the boss fight, and you can see that thing floating around spinning, that's Maven. And I just died. So one thing I want to point out here is when you die in Path of Exile, you lose experience. So you can see I dropped about 1.5 bars. I don't know what the exact values are as far as how much experience you lose when you die, but you do lose experience. So one thing I just want to point out is that you're never going to go back a level, so that's kind of merciful, but it'll help you plan out your runs. If you're trying to push up to higher and higher map levels, or doing different content that is going to put you at risk, provided you're not in hardcore mode, in which case when you die, you die. Make sure that your experience bar isn't too full. I honestly wasn't expecting to die here in the level 12 map. That was mostly because I'm bad at the game, but just keep in mind what your XP level is at when you're running more difficult content, because the last thing you want is to be like this, running a level 12 map when you're used to clearing level 15 maps and dying right when you're on the cusp of leveling up. So here we go back into the arena. One little strategy, if you're bad like me, put down a portal right there, so if you die again, you'll just port right to that spot. There you can see I just ported in and blew up the boss. But so you see the Maven dropped an invitation there, so that is because we filled up that blue bar on the Atlas. So now we can run that mission, which will involve killing the minions of Maven. So one thing I want to point out here too is when you get this totem from the League event in a boss room, the boss is going to spawn again. So I think she's popping up shortly, but you'll see the boss pop up again, and you just got to kill him again. So there it is, Nightmare Manifest. That's the same boss that we just killed, and we've got to kill her again. because it's in the same room as the totem. So now that we have completed, you can see I got 3,700 tribute points. Now, sometimes on certain maps, it's the final boss isn't necessarily in the last room, or you want to go back. Now, they made it really nice in that you can click that button on the bottom right to bring up the menu and choose what you want. So here you can see 2 Chaos Orbs cost 1,800, the sword costs 800, Cluster Jewels 680. That's how you buy the loot using the tribute points that you earned from the run. So, go ahead and pick whatever loot you want, and then you're good to go. Also, a pro tip, you can control click to automatically send things over to your inventory. So the last thing I want to cover is blood aqueducts. This is a great spot to go to level up your character. Right now I'm level 66. I'd recommend coming here if you're 65 to 70, because once you're in Act 10, things are going to hit a lot harder. So what you're going to do is when you're at the waypoint there, control click the blue dot, and then you can choose which instance you want to go into. So I always click new, and that'll spawn a new instance of blood aqueducts. I sped it up just because it's kind of a drag to watch leveling up. But the point is that when you're done with blood aqueducts for the first time, and you'll see it, you'll know it when you get there. It's the first thing you do when you finish Act 8 and begin Act 9. It's very linear, and basically you're just gonna run right through it, kill all the mobs, and rinse and repeat, so that way you can level up, get some more skill points, and have access to some better loot, because a lot of the really good loot in this game is only usable at level 68 and up. Level 70 is kind of technically the max level. So here you can see we just finished that run, and we go over to the waypoint, control click, and then do a new one. The game kind of considers level 70 to be the maximum level in terms of loot. In terms of loot equipment. So the eye level on loot will go up very high. I think the highest is 80 something, maybe even 90. But in order to equip it, the maximum level you need to be is 70. So if you get to level 70 before Act 10, then you'll be able to equip any loot that you get. And that's very, very helpful and important when you get, when you start worrying about your build. So, and especially now towards the end of the main game itself, getting your build locked in is the name of the game. So that's how I'd suggest running it, getting yourself to 68 or 70, and then moving on to Act 10 and finishing up. So that'll do it for my intro to Path of Exile. I realize it's a lot. I'm going to put timestamps in so you can skip around. Hopefully that'll make a little bit more sense. Path of Exile is an extremely dense game, and I didn't cover even the half of it. So if there are any specific questions or things that you'd like to know about or see, please let me know, and I'll put something together to address those questions. But as always, thanks for watching. Hit like, subscribe, and we will see you later. Thanks again. Bye, guys.